supposed to mean? Zero credit risk, right? On stuff that has not just a little bit of credit risk, but immense credit risk. Now, how is the guy supposed to find a way to say that something that has immense credit risk has zero credit risk? What's his boss directing him to do? That's right, make it up. That's why we pay you, right? It is your job to devise some method in which this produces a AAA without ever looking. Thank you. That completes, I will not subject you to a PowerPoint presentation. That completes the slide portion of tonight's. All right? This is a $1 trillion plus industry run on don't ask, don't tell. And you know what happened when they finally looked at some actual loan files? Fitch, the smallest of the three rating agencies, does that in November 2007. Pretty significant date because the entire market, secondary market in non-prime, has collapsed. And so they're not going to cost themselves any business at this point if they look. And Fitch says, after this small sample look at the loan files, the results were disconcerting in that there was the appearance of fraud in nearly every file we reviewed. No Sherlock, right? What do you think is going to happen if you don't look? What are they going to load it up with as long as they can get a AAA rating? Now, we know, therefore, that the people that purchased it did no credit checks that had any meaning. We know that the rating agencies gave them AAAs without doing anything. Could the buyers of these exotic financial derivatives have done any due diligence? The loan files didn't even exist for them to look at. So all those banks out there that bought well over $1 trillion of this stuff, how do you think we did stress tests? Remember the stress tests? It's like doing a stress test on an airplane wing, except you don't actually have the airplane wing. And you don't actually know what the airplane wing is made out of. But you hypothetically test it. You know, it's a farce. Okay. Back to how we got here, into this insane world where people would treat as having zero credit risk things that have massive credit risk that were sure, as soon as the music stopped, to cause trillions of dollars of losses. Right? How did we get there? Two concepts from criminology I'd like to do. One is the concept of control fraud. And that simply means what happens when the people that control a seemingly legitimate organization use it as a weapon to defraud. So in the corporate context, that's going to typically mean the CEO. And the concept of a criminogenic environment. If any of you are from health backgrounds, we stole this from pathological environments, right? And it simply looks at what kind of environments are going to create incentive structures where you're going to have a lot of crime. And we actually use the word epidemic to describe when you have a great deal of this kind of crime. So, how many people recall the subprime crisis of 1991, 1992? It's a trick question. It's a prof you're listening to. There was none, and there was none because we killed it as regulators. People were doing the same type of insane thing as lenders. We said, this is going to end in disaster, and we stopped it. And there was, in fact, no economic crisis at all. Indeed, there was essentially no cost to the taxpayers at all. I'm going to be emphasizing one variant of this kind of control fraud, and that is accounting, right? Which is the weapon of choice in the financial sphere. But I want to also, while I have you, do the 45-second version of these kind of control frauds, different variants, also maim and kill people. And if you want good examples recently, it would be infant formula in China. where you gain a competitive advantage by not putting milk in infant formula. You end up, because of that, driving the honest providers of infant formula out of the marketplace because they can't compete with people that actually use milk when you use water and talc. Okay? So we're going to be talking mostly about money, which is bad enough. In the savings and loan debacle, the National Commission that did come along and looked at the causes said that at the typical large failure, fraud was invariably present. The FBI began testifying publicly in September 2004, emphasis on that date, that there was a quote-unquote epidemic of mortgage fraud developing in the United States. So when people tell you that nobody could have foresaw that there was going to be a problem, garbage. They not only foresaw it, they warned people about it explicitly. Let's look at how you optimize these kinds of accounting fraud. And it's basically going to be three things. You're going to, and their first two are heavily related. You're going to grow like crazy, Ponzi scheme levels of growth. You're going to loan to people who are uncreditworthy because they will agree to pay you more, but also because that's the way to grow really rapidly. In the United States, there aren't a whole lot of people making $300,000 a year who weren't able to get a home loan. So you can't simply decide to grow very rapidly by making good loans, but you can guarantee immense growth if you loan to people who can't pay you back, right? The third thing is extreme leverage. This combination produces guaranteed, I want to emphasize that, guaranteed, record, not high, but off the chart profits as long as you are in the expansion phase of a financial bubble. And therefore, if any of you come from economics backgrounds, standard econometric techniques, which is simply statistics in the economics context, produce the worst possible results and the worst possible policies during the expansion phase of the bubble. Because if you look, doing things like loaning to people who can't pay you back, hey, that's associated with the highest possible profits if you run statistical analyses while the bubble is still expanding. And collectively, all of this produces, this optimization, extraordinary losses. Control frauds cause greater losses than all other forms of property crime combined. Individual losses are massive. Ian mentioned IndyMac. IndyMac sold over $200 billion of liar's loans to other institutions, getting AAA and AA ratings for the reasons we've just went through. And those institutions are going to suffer roughly 80% losses on that portfolio that they purchased. In 1 year alone, 2006, IndyMac sold $80 billion of liar's loans. Now, think of that if you had been a regulator and the 7th largest savings and loan in America comes up to you and says, "Hi, I've got a new strategic plan. I'm going to make liar's loans." Might that have been a clue, right, that maybe this was not going to end very well? Because that's the second thing that's guaranteed, you see. Guaranteed record initial accounting profits and guaranteed catastrophic failure. So individual failures are massive. Second thing, though, is what happens when a number of folks, because of optimization, follow the same strategy? You're going to get a financial bubble. And you're going to get one that extends and hyperinflates. By the end, 40% of all mortgage loans in America were non-prime. And that's a massive market. So that's just off the charts insane.